YRN always had the feeling that someone was watching her. At first, she dismissed it as paranoia. A shadow too close, an unfamiliar face in the crowd, maybe she was imagining things. But then, little things started happening. She'd come home to find her windows unlocked when she was sure she had locked them. A bouquet of her favorite flowers appeared on her doorstep with no name. A note in messy handwriting once arrived in her mailbox. "You belong to me." She had thrown it away, forcing herself to believe it was just some prank. But the feeling never left her. And she had no idea that the man behind it all was someone who had been watching her for years. Someone who had already decided she was his. Jungkook, a name feared by many, a man who ruled the underground world with blood-stained hands, and the man who had been obsessed with her since the moment he first saw her. YRN had just finished her shift at the cafe and was walking home. Her cousin had offered to pick her up, but she refused. It wasn't too late, and she liked walking. Big mistake. The moment she turned onto the empty street, she felt it. The presence. Her steps quickened. Her heart pounded. She reached into her bag for her phone, but before she could grab it, a hand wrapped around her wrist. A strong grip yanked her back against a hard chest, and a deep voice whispered against her ear,
"You shouldn't have ignored me, sweetheart."
Her blood ran cold. She thrashed against the grip, trying to scream, but another hand covered her mouth.
That fight it, baby."
The last thing she remembered was the scent of expensive cologne, the sensation of being lifted off the ground, and then everything faded to black. YRN woke up in an unfamiliar room. Her head ached. Her wrists were from struggling. She looked around, realizing she was in a luxurious bedroom too grand to be a normal house. A large bed, velvet curtains, and a view that overlooked a private garden. Then she saw him, Jungkook, sitting in a chair across from her, dressed in black, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He was watching her with dark, unreadable eyes. "Jungkook, you're finally awake," he said. Voice deep and smooth, she backed against the headboard. "Yin, where am I?" "Jungkook, my mansion," he answered simply, standing up and walking towards her. Fear gripped her chest. "Yin, let me go," he sighed. "Jungkook, I can't do that, sweetheart." "Yin, Jungkook, please," she whispered, her voice shaking. His jaw clenched. "Jungkook, do you have any idea how long I've waited for you?" Her heart pounded as he leaned closer, eyes burning with something dangerous. "Jungkook, you don't understand, do you?" He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Jungkook, I've been watching you for years. You're mine, YRN. You always have been." She shivered at the possessiveness in his voice. "Yin, you're insane," she breathed. Jungkook smirked. "Jungkook, maybe." Then his expression darkened. "Jungkook, but you're not leaving me." Her stomach twisted. She had to get out of here. YRN had spent days trapped in Jungkook's mansion. Every door was locked, every window reinforced. The guards followed his every order, ensuring she had nowhere to run. But then she found an opportunity. One evening, when Jungkook was out, she stumbled upon his study, and inside, she found his phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed the only number she trusted. Her cousin picked up on the first ring. "Cousin. YN. Where are you?" "Yin. I don't have time to explain," she whispered. "Help me. I need to get out." Her cousin's voice was urgent. "Cousin. Find a way to the airport. I'll be there waiting for you. Just get there. No matter what." She hung up, her pulse racing. She had one shot, and she had to take it. She ran through the empty corridors, past the guards who were distracted for a brief moment. She slipped through the garden, climbing over the wall. She didn't stop running. She didn't stop even when her lungs burned, even when her legs felt weak. And then she saw it. The airport. Relief crashed over her. She had made it. Breathing heavily, she walked inside, scanning the crowd for her cousin. Then she froze, because walking straight towards her, eyes locked onto her with a deadly expression, was Jungkook. Her heart stopped. Yin, no. She whispered. He was here. He had found her. And this time, he wouldn't let her go. Yn's breath hitched as Jungkook closed the distance between them. His dark eyes, cold and unreadable, bore into hers. There was no trace of anger, only possession. She turned to run, but he was faster. A strong arm wrapped around her waist, yanking her against his chest. Jungkook, you really thought you could leave me? He murmured, his voice laced with amusement. People were everywhere, yet no one noticed their struggle. To the outside world, they probably looked like lovers embracing. Yin, let me go, Yn whispered, trying to shove him away. His grip tightened. Jungkook, not a chance, sweetheart. She whimpered as he dragged her outside. Panic clawed at her throat. She had been so close to freedom. Jungkook led her to a sleek black car parked outside the airport. The back door swung open, and she saw his man waiting inside. She shook her head frantically. Yin. No, Jungkook, please. But he silenced her with a warning glare. Jungkook, you either come willingly, or I carry you inside. He threatened. Tears burned her eyes. She had no choice. With a defeated heart, she slid into the car. Jungkook followed, shutting the door behind them. As the car pulled away, she realized something chilling. She wasn't escaping him. She never would. Back at the mansion, things were different. Jungkook wasn't just keeping her locked away, he was courting her in his own twisted way. Every morning, he brought her breakfast himself. Every night, he sat beside her, talking to her as if they were a normal couple. He gifted her expensive dresses, jewelry, and books she loved, but none of it softened her heart. Yin, you can't force me to love you, she spat one night, shoving away the plate of food he had placed in front of her. Jungkook sighed, his patience endless. Jungkook, I'm not forcing you, baby. You will love me on your own. Her eyes burned with defiance. Yin, that will never happen. His expression darkened. Jungkook, we'll see. Despite her protests, a small part of her was breaking. The way he looked at her, the way he treated her with care, confused her. How could a man so cruel also be so gentle? And why was her heart betraying her by reacting to him? Days turned into weeks. Yn had tried everything, fighting him, ignoring him, even starving herself to make him let her go. But Jungkook never budged. He never raised his voice, never lost control. Instead, he waited. Then one night, everything changed. Yn woke to the sound of gunshots. She bolted upright, fear gripping her chest. Jungkook's men were shouting. The scent of blood filled the air. Someone had attacked the mansion. She ran to the door, but before she could open it, strong arms pulled her back. Jungkook. His expression was wild, his face splattered with blood. Jungkook, are you hurt? He demanded, scanning her for injuries. She shook her head, too stunned to speak. His arms tightened around her. Jungkook, I thought I lost you. And then he kissed her, desperate, hungry, possessive. Yn stiffened, her mind screaming at her to resist, but her body betrayed her, because deep down, in the darkest part of her heart, she didn't hate it. She didn't hate him. After that night, Yn saw Jungkook differently. She saw the way his men feared him but also respected him. She saw the way he protected those loyal to him, the way he protected her, and she hated it. She hated the way her heart started to soften. One evening, as she sat in the garden, Jungkook joined her. "Jungkook, you're quiet today," he said, watching her closely. She sighed. "Yin, I don't understand you." He tilted his head. "Jungkook, what do you mean?" "Yin, you're a monster, Jungkook," she whispered, "but you're also kind." A small smirk played on his lips. "Jungkook, are you finally seeing me, baby?" She looked away. "Yin, I don't want to." Jungkook leaned closer, his breath warm against her skin. "Jungkook, but you do." And she had no answer to that. As Jungkook started to notice her sadness, one day, Jungkook gave her a choice. "Jungkook, if you want to leave, I'll let you," he said, holding out a key. Her heart pounded. Was this a trick? She swallowed. "Yin, and if I stay?" He smirked secretly. He knew the wall around her is cracking. His eyes darkened. "Jungkook, then you're mine forever." She stared at the key in her hand. Freedom or Jungkook? And to her horror, she realized something. She wanted him. Slowly, she placed the key on the table. Jungkook's gaze burned into hers. "Jungkook, you're staying?" he murmured, voice almost disbelieving. She nodded. His expression turned fierce. "Jungkook, you have no idea what you've just done, sweetheart." And then he kissed her deep, claiming, sealing her fate. YN had fallen for the beast, and there was no turning back. After few weeks, her cousin had managed to track her down. Somehow, he had slipped past Jungkook's men and entered the mansion, demanding to take YN away. And Jungkook, he was furious, his jaw clenched, his eyes dark with rage as he stood between YN and her cousin like a beast protecting his territory. "Jungkook, you think you can just walk in here and take her?" Jungkook's voice was low, deadly. Her cousin squared his shoulders. "Cousin, I know what kind of man you are. Jungkook, she's not yours." Jungkook let out a dark chuckle, his grip on YN's wrist tightening. "Jungkook, not mine," he echoed, turning to her. "Tell him, sweetheart." YN swallowed, heart racing. She should have said yes. "Take me away," but she didn't, and Jungkook felt it. A slow smirk stretched across his lips as he leaned in, brushing his lips against her ear. "Jungkook, see?" he murmured, voice laced with satisfaction. "She's already mine." Her cousin's eyes widened. "Cousin, YN?" Jungkook didn't let him speak. Instead, he pulled YN against his chest, his fingers digging into her waist as he claimed her in front of him. His lips crashed onto hers, deep, possessive, a silent warning that no one could take her away from him. YN gasped into the kiss, her body betraying her as heat rushed through her veins. Jungkook growled against her lips. "Jungkook, I should punish you for letting another man think he can have you." Her cousin looked stunned, horrified. Even but YN barely registered it, because Jungkook's lips had moved to her neck, trailing, slow, teasing kisses down her skin. "Jungkook, you belong to me," he murmured, voice husky. Her knees nearly gave out. Her cousin took a step back. "Cousin, I won't force you, YN, but if you want to leave, I'll take you." Jungkook's grip on her waist tightened. YN's breath hitched, but when she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Yin, I'm staying." Jungkook smirked. "Jungkook, good girl." And as her cousin turned and left, Jungkook wasted no time. He lifted her into his arms, carrying her upstairs, because tonight he was going to remind her exactly who she belonged to.